Today we're going to be talking about trade in ancient civilizations. Now what we have here is a map of Asia. And what you have to understand is trade is very important for early civilizations. Trade is a way for these different countries and societies and cultures to learn about each other and to not only trade goods, but even ideas and religions and so on and so forth. So right here, we have a map of Asia. This whole area right here, this is Asia. These are countries like Japan, China, India. Middle East is right here. Saudi Arabia and Iraq is right here. And eventually to the tip of Europe, right here. And this right here, the city called Constantinople, will one day become a very important city in Europe and a very rich city. Over here we have the continent of Africa. This is the island of Madagascar. And right here we have Australia. If you notice here, there are two important trading routes. And the first one we're going to talk about is the China Silk Road. As you see on the key, it's the road in orange. So the China Silk Road will begin here in Beijing, which is in China, and it works its way across China, through the Middle East, and eventually to Europe. Now this was called the Silk Road because the Chinese exported or sold or traded a lot of silk. And when we talk about exports, we just mean things that they sold or they gave to other people. If you look over here on the left-hand side at the bottom, we can see what the Chinese exported. Things like tea, porcelain, silk, and paper. Now, if you notice the China Silk Road, you notice that it's not a straight line. This is because there are natural features or natural geographic features that are in the way, such as deserts and mountains. It's a lot easier to go around the deserts and mountains rather than go straight through them. Also, if you look on here, you see there are these major cities along the way. Now, not all of these major cities were around before the Silk Road even began. Cities like Bukhara probably developed over time because more and more people traveled along the roads and traded these goods. And they eventually grew from small trading posts to towns and eventually to large cities. If we see here, we have another very important trade network is the Indian Ocean Network. This is called the Indian Ocean Network because they mainly spend a lot of time in the Indian Ocean. Again, we see it starts out in northern China, goes to southern China, Southeast Asia, where countries like Cambodia and Thailand and even Vietnam are, all the way here to India, these two major cities, then to the Middle East, and down the East African coast. Now, what you notice with the Indian Ocean Network is that the routes that these people take are very close to the coast. Now, this is important. Many of these countries and societies, their ships aren't big or very advanced. So they have to make sure they stay near the coast and they can see land. If they venture too far out into the ocean, there's not really much around they can see and they can easily get lost. Remember, the compass has not been invented yet. So it's really hard to travel far distances, especially when you can't see a lot of things. So if they go out in the ocean, they're done for. So they have to hug the coastline and stay near the major lands and trade with these people. And then they work their way back the similar way. Also, what you notice is sometimes they may hug the coastline and go straight here, or they might shoot right across here. Now, both of these networks are important because it allowed for them to trade not only goods, but ideas and technology, so on and so forth. And if we see on the left-hand column, we can see the different things that were traded. In India, they traded gems, cotton, spices, even precious metals. In Arabia, or Arabian exports, which is the Middle East here, countries like Saudi Arabia and Iraq, oils, spices, horses, glass, gems, and precious metals were all traded. And in Africa, their exports were ivory, wood, gems, and precious metals. Ivory here is what elephant tusks are made out of. So they'll hunt elephants, take their tusks, and turn them into things like keys on a piano. The last thing we're going to talk about here are the monsoons. Now, when you think of monsoons, you think of the rainy season. So that's your keyword or key phrase for this video. When you hear monsoons, you think of rainy season. And when it rains, it'll rain for days and months on straight. Now, we have two types of monsoons. We have the summer monsoons in red and the winter monsoons in blue. Now, the winter monsoons will bring dry and colder air or weather, and the summer monsoons will bring wet and warmer weather or air into this whole region here. Now, the monsoons are both a blessing and a curse because the monsoons can bring a lot of good rain and good weather that can cause the soil to become fertile again and to help crops grow. However, the downside is if it's raining for days and months on end, your crops can die and even houses can be destroyed. All of this stuff comes together to create these two very important trade networks that helped all these people learn and grow. And some of these trade networks are still used to this day.